loving God is going to cast you into an inferno of fire for the rest of eternity if you don't serve Him. How many times have we heard this from the Christian community? And the Muslim community as well. And the Orthodox Jews and all the other theists. I wanted to talk a little bit about fundamentalism in general, but more so the effects of fundamentalism. And don't mind, I've got my girlfriend's idea. It's one of those temporary tattoo things. Let's look at fundamentalism's effects on the family and upon the community and even upon Christianity itself. And there's an interesting thing that you'll notice about fundamentalism as how it refers to the Christian community as a whole. You'll find that fundamentalist homes, and I'll give you an example in a moment, typically dissolve into, family decay. That is that in a home where the parents are fundamentalist Christians, and I've only studied the effects when both parents are fundamentalists. I'm not sure about when one's a fundamentalist and one's a different, religious group. I think that's fairly uncommon because fundies tend to only marry other fundies because they can't have sex outside of the Christian community because it's only for making kids. It's not for pleasure. You're a sinner. Typically, they have a lot of kids. The kids feel neglected, and the kids end up atheists. Case in point, there was a family that went to the church I used to go to. The parents were both very, very fiery fundamentalists. The woman in this house said she didn't like music with drums because it sounded too satanic. Wouldn't let their daughters, and they had 6 daughters, no sons, wouldn't let them read Harry Potter or watch, Sword in the Stone. I can only imagine the effect of Twilight on that household, even though 2 of their daughters are now over 18. Basically, their oldest daughter, who I'm still friends with, I don't talk to the parents anymore, but I still talk to their oldest daughter. She's a hard atheist. She's like, I love my parents, but they're nuts. And the second daughter, lo and behold, she's not a hard atheist. She's more of an agnostic, but she's certainly not a fundamentalist Christian. She's more of an intellectual. She's going to college. I think veterinary or something like that. So you look at the fundamentalist households of the world, most of their children will not be fundamentalists. And here is the ninth gate sort of moment for the atheist community. And this is my prophecy for the next 30 or so years. You will see most of the children growing up in the 1/3 of households in the United States that describe themselves as evangelical Christians, that is, hardliner Christians. You will see most of their children adopt atheism, agnosticism, or various left-hand path faiths. You will see very few of them continue to be fundamentalists, except in communities where fundamentalism is in force so powerfully that it indoctrinates the entire lifestyle within that geographic area. Isolated fundamentalists that aren't in a singularly fundamentalist community, some small Midwestern farming town of 50 people where everyone is a fundamentalist Christian and their library is one book and that's the Bible, they may come out and be fundamentalists. Typically, though, in a family with any sort of means and upward mobility, the children will absolutely abandon fundamentalist Christianity. They may stay Christians, but they certainly won't be fundamentalist Christians. They will look back in horror upon their childhood, and they will adopt most likely atheism or agnosticism. That's my prophecy for the next 30 or so years. You're going to see an explosion within America, Canada, all of the Western countries. You're going to see an explosion of non-belief in religion. It's going to be the most powerful atheistic movement the world has ever seen, and religion will be relegated to the back burner in an entire hemisphere of the world. That's my prophecy. I guarantee it will come true. Let's look at its effect upon community. When a community is solely based on religious discipline, what does that community do when one of its members does not adhere to the specific beliefs of others? Let's say a Catholic living in a Protestant town where everyone's fundamentalist. They're ostracized. There's no reason for people to move into such a community because unless they're already in agreement with all of the major tenets of that community, they won't fit in. Those communities, the isolated ones, will slowly die off because most of their children will run off and become big city atheists, and because they're not able to repopulate at a rate which will reseed them with more fundies. There's another thing feeding into that factor, which I just discussed. Let's look at its effect on other Christians. What do you think that Unitarians think when they see a bunch of Pentecostals dancing around speaking in tongues? They think this is absolutely ridiculous. Because there are Christians that use common sense, and there are Christians that have logical faculties unmarred by a bunch of Iron Age dogma. Those people react to a Pentecostal or a Southern Baptist or, a really, really hardline Catholic with the same distaste that an atheist would. In effect, fundamentalist Christianity is the death knell of Christianity itself. I would say the same thing about Islam. Most Muslims are moderate or liberal. What do you think they think of when they see suicide bombings? The Twin Towers falling, war in the name of Allah, jihad. They get a distaste for the religion they're already adherents of, and they start to lose faith because they examine the actions of the people within their religion. They say, this is not in keeping with the spirit of my religion. It is obvious that my God doesn't actually exist and or doesn't have as much power as the Quran or the Bible or whatever claims that God has. That is, that the individuals within that religion are supposed to be bound by these divine edicts of peace and common sense and good behavior. Instead, they exhibit some of the most subhuman animalistic behavior any people on earth have ever exhibited. Case in point, the conquistadors, the Crusades, when the Muslims swept across North Africa and into Spain. Only through theocratic groups, and this is where Islam almost has an edge over Christianity. Most Christian countries now, they're Western, they're modernized, they have secular governments that aren't run by theocrats. So the educational system isn't explicitly pro-Christian. In Muslim countries, that's not the case. In Islamic countries, religion and education mix. The people are indoctrinated at a young age into these religious groups. That's why I support the West going into those countries and breaking the spine of those theocratic governments and say, knock it off, Omar, because that's what we need to do. If we don't want to see from this third world scumhole, places like Syria or Afghanistan or Turkey or whatever, which oppress their own people constantly, if we don't want to see those theocratic values spread out of that location, which is a desert, and into more fertile lands where it can then repopulate, we need to cut off the head of the dragon right away. I'd say the same about Mormonism. Keep it in Utah, maybe pass a law against Mormonism anywhere else. I say that jokingly, of course. We have the right to freedom of religion in this country, but you get the general idea. Essentially, the way to stop these religions from spreading is to use our minds and to use our words. Using force isn't going to do anything. We've seen throughout history when religions are persecuted by physical violence, they tend to grow. That's true with atheism as well. When atheists have been persecuted, the more liberal Christians or Jews or whoever happens to be persecuting them start to question their faith. Persecuting others through physical means doesn't work very well. It may seem like a good effort, but in reality using physical violence does not work very well. So we can scrap those plans. What we will need to stop these theistic religions from perpetuating themselves and continuing to destroy this planet is we need to use our brains and our language and our charisma and every other means at our disposal through peaceful means to convince people that those religions are wrong. It's not that difficult to do. When you read about the history of most theistic movements, you hear a lot about genocide and rape and witch burnings and pillories and, invasions and wars and all these crazed pedophiles that get elevated to sainthood status within these religions. It shouldn't be that hard. It's pretty self-explanatory how we're going to bring the roof crashing down on Christianity or Islam's head. The religions, we just got to give them enough rope to hang themselves with, they'll kill themselves off. Because the adherents in those religions aren't going to be adherents much longer. You are now entering an age in which there will be a pagan revival, an atheistic revival, and a satanic revival all in one. And there's absolutely nothing the Christians or Muslims can do about it. Look, another case in point, black metal. Absolutely satanic music. There's no other purpose to it. It celebrates darkness. Where do you think most of the views on all of the black metal that I've uploaded come from? Do they come from the USA? Some of them. Quite a few in Europe. Where else do you think I get a lot of views on my black metal from? The Middle Eastern countries run by Muslims. Now, why would Muslims be listening to black metal? It's absolutely antithetical to their belief system. The only answer, there are already a lot of atheists and Satanists and pagans and National Socialists and all these various groups embedded in the Middle East. And these aren't people from Western countries that moved into the Middle East either. These are actual born and raised people from Saudi Arabia, from Syria, from Afghanistan, from Iraq, all of these countries that are tuning into a totally different religious sentiment than what they've been raised with, because the intellectuals, they have the education to understand Islam's a farce. The political activists, the rebel youth, and here's the other thing that will kill all of these religions off. Youth is programmed to rebel. Biologically speaking, the way in which the human race has evolved over time and survived over time is to change the things that it's been doing that don't work and to implement things that do. This is driven by malcontent and rebellion. Rebellion is the seed from which the fruit of progress grows. There is no progress without rebellion. If everyone was happy with the way things were, nobody would invent anything. Nobody would innovate anything. Certainly nobody would even consider challenging authority. There'd be no reason to. Everyone's already happy with the way things are. Next time a plague rolls around, oh, there's no one to develop a new medicine. The medicines we've got are working fine. Progress is driven by rebellion. And rebellion is something which Christianity and Islam and Judaism and all the theistic Abrahamic faiths attempt to subvert. Christianity says, rebel kids, you're going to hell, you're terrible people. Same in Islam, same in Judaism. What they don't understand is they're suppressing the creativity of the youth, and that's going to boil over significantly, because the youth will rebel. If they look and they see and they perceive that the reason that they're being blamed as bad people, the reason they're being punished for that totally natural feeling of rebellion is the predominant religion in the first place, that is, Christianity's the reason why I'm getting in trouble for not doing what my parents tell me, they will rebel directly against the religion rather than against their parents. It's a psychological motive. They'll take the natural rebellion, which is to rebel against parents, against superiors, teachers, whatever. They take that and they put it over on their religion. And they will instead rebel against the religion itself. When they rebel against the religion, they get all their friends together. Wow, this is cool. Black metal, psychedelic rock, drugs, sex, orgies, killing, all of these things which religion has told them are terrible things, and they will practice them. They'll enshrine them. They'll make them the ideal. Now, in the West, of course, you have the media to perpetuate this fact. Hollywood, you always see these movies. There's this glamorous kid, the new kid in school with the leather jacket, and he rebels against everyone. Wow, he's so cool. And then at the end, he usually undergoes some transformation, becomes, the nice guy and starts dating the cheerleader. But in essence, the reason he's cool, he's a rebel, he does his own thing, he doesn't listen to teachers. Wow, he just, put a tack in the teacher's chair. In the East, of course, we've got less of this. If you've ever seen Mexican soap operas, you know that the Hispanic Catholics are probably the most rebel-obsessed people ever. Emo music, black metal, that's all really popular in South and Central America, too. Everything south of the border with Mexico will eat grindcore and black metal up. The youth in these countries, even more so in America, we talk about enshrining rebel culture in the United States. We don't enshrine rebel culture, we turn it into a movie or a TV show. Down there, they actually practice it. Have you ever seen British people rioting? Have you ever seen the difference? Americans, they go to a protest, they're holding signs and chanting and, clapping their hands and give peace a chance or whatever. And the British are like, fuck you! And they start drinking and beating up the police, and the police are riding horses through. They take sticks and wham right on the horse's ass. There was one video on YouTube for a while about the poll tax riots. I'm not exactly sure what that is. But the British were going crazy. They were throwing concrete blocks through the cop cars' windows and burning stores down. You see the same thing, Black Bloc in France or whatever. The Europeans know how to do a good riot. We're killing off fundamentalism because of this rebellion. The spirit of rebellion, it's been cheapened somewhat in America and Canada, but it's alive and well in all the other parts of the world. And let me tell you something else that's interesting. Totally off the topic of fundamentalism. China. What do you think is going to happen in China when the new generation starts to rebel? What else is there to rebel against except for communism? They're going to rebel against that. Oh, why can't I speak freely? Why I cannot do Twitter update? Because you'll get taken away by the secret police and put in jail, honey. Well, instead of rebelling against the parents, we get something more authoritative and big to rebel against. Even our parents are afraid of this communism stuff. China's going to fall in the next couple of decades, just like fundamentalism is going to fall shortly after that. Russia, the people are going to rise up. People have been rising up and usurping government and religion for the last 5,000 years. It's not going to stop. And this rebellion is progress. It's not a bad thing. Revolutions, bloody or bloodless, are always good. They refresh things. The tree of liberty must be watered with the blood of tyrants from time to time. I can't remember who made that quote. That's very true. The tyranny of theistic religion will fall, and you will see a new atheistic age. And that will be a golden age for this world, because we will finally kick these tyrants out of office, out of our lives. We will tell them, no, you're not going to lambaste the gays or the liberals or the commies or any of these other groups that you've been trying to say are terrible people because they dare to stand up against your stupid Bronze Age dogma. It's not going to happen anymore. You're relegated to the trash pit of history. You'll see the death of fundamentalist Christianity. You'll see the death of fundamentalist Islam. You'll see the death of Orthodox Judaism, and it will be glorious. And it's not going to be some satanic reign of, fire and brimstone on the other side saying, well, we'll persecute the Christians. It'll simply be a time of understanding and peace. Of course, it'll probably end up marred in the long run by some new religion, but as long as we can keep new religions from forming, we're golden for a while. Peace out.